Benita, my dear, you have spoken very eloquently, especially about women issues. So thank you for that. Very
And then you take a picture.
And Jack, you are amazing. You are a great leader. And you know, the insurance companies, they don't want to pay for anyone. So I'm glad you tackled that. This is for you. And come this way.
One, two, three. Congratulations.
Good afternoon. Today, the International Federation for Peace and Sustainable Development celebrating the International Youth Day. Today is your day for the youth. The potential of youth partnership in today's society is now, and the opportunity to raise awareness of the challenges facing the youth. You are our future generation, and the leaders, as our President Mrs. Kader said always to the youth she hosted at the UN model, you are our future. Today we celebrate the youth and encourage you with a very selective group of ambassadors to the United Nations from all parts of the world, including Africa, Asia, Europe, and South America, to support you in building a better future. Sally, go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Your Excellencies, the ambassadors who are here, thank you for coming this afternoon, in spite of this miserable weather. But in some countries, they like rain, so we cannot say anything bad about rain because it's bring, good stuff for many countries that are waiting for it, even within this country. So, but in spite of this, you all came, and I appreciate that very much. Our organization, I'll tell you a little bit about it in brief. We are 16 years old, and we started right after a major disaster in the world and in this country. So we set out to bring people together and to educate, especially youth, because you are our leaders and your future leaders, and the world is in your hands. So we messed up our generation, but it's up to you to clean it and not make the same mistakes. So today I have a selection of wonderful young men and women that they have accomplished so much, and they inspire all of us. And I know that I am very inspired by all of what you have done. And also, we want to show you that as a youngster, your circumstances does not make who you are. You can raise and rise above whatever you are in, politically, physically, mentally, intellectually. I have a young lady who was with us as well, and she was raised in a very bad circumstances with real trouble background and family, and her family, prostituted her. They dealt with drugs, and she now has a master's degree from Columbia. So we can do it, and this is why we are here today, to inspire each other and get inspired by all the people who did it and will do it. I would like to first start with a very selective group of amazing ambassadors who cares about youth and who cares about what happened in the world, and they will share with us some of their experience and some of the experience from their countries. It gives me a great honor to introduce my first speaker, who happened to be, of course, a wonderful woman. And a very accomplished woman, and so that to me is big time important. So I would like to introduce Her Excellency, Ms. Fatima Kayari Mohammed. She is the permanent observer of the African Union to the United Nations. Prior to her appointment, Her Excellency was a senior special advisor to the Economic Community of West African State, ECOWAS, and where her work mainly focused on peace and security, regional integration, and organizational development. During her illustrious career, Her Excellency worked as an executive director at West Africa Conflict and Security Consulting. Please give her a big warm welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for your kind words and for the great welcome. Excellencies, fellow ambassadors, distinguished guests, and dear participants, great young leaders of today and tomorrow, and ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor for me to be here today, and I thank Madam Sally and Ralph Kader, the founders of International Federation for Peace and Sustainable Development, for their leadership in convening this dynamic meeting to celebrate International Youth Day. Our distinguished hosts have a solid track record when it comes to addressing key themes such as youth empowerment and bringing all relevant actors together on concrete actions. The Permanent Observer Mission of the African Union is very pleased to join you in this effort, and it is a wonderful opportunity for all of us to engage on how we can support the creation of safe spaces for youth. It is also a fantastic platform for young women and men to share their experiences, their hopes and visions for a better today and tomorrow. And I must say that I am delighted to witness such a strong presence of young people in the room this afternoon. The African Union has made strides in supporting youth through a number of initiatives. Firstly, through the development of a policy framework for youth with the African Youth Charter, which was adopted in 2006. And this was to empower young men and women of our continent. In the area of education for youth, the African Union in 2015 adopted the Continental Education Strategy for Africa, 2016-2025. And in 2017, the theme for the year, every year we basically have a theme on issues that are critical for the continent. And the theme for the year last year was harnessing the democratic dividend through investment in youth. The African Union has also established a Pan-African University with satellites in different capitals on the continent. And this, together with the Volunteer Youth Program, are major components in achieving our development agenda, the 2063 Agenda for Africa. But the bedrock for these key investments lies in one main source, which is education. Education, in addition to youth and women, are core pillars of Agenda 2063. And our motto is the Africa we want. This agenda aspires to an Africa whose development is people-driven, relying on the potential of African people, especially women and youth, and caring for children. In this spirit, the African Union Commission is fully committed to partner with young people and to create safe spaces for them to echo their voices and share their dreams. The African Union, in partnership with its youth, continues to lead activities at continental, regional, and national levels across Africa to ensure that no youth is left behind. I must say here that I'm inspired by the relentless commitment of girls and boys, young women and men, in building their communities. The African Union also recognizes that together we can build our common goal of a prosperous and stronger societies. As the saying goes, educate a child and you educate a community. This is the approach needed now more than ever to nurture tomorrow's leaders on ideals of equality, inclusivity, and human rights. And this is why marking this day is important. But I think what is even more important is that it is not how the day is celebrated, but how the follow-up and the discussions and engagement are carried forward. This year's theme, Safe Spaces for Youth, is necessary for dialogue and the contributions that youth make towards freedom of expression and mutual respect in all spaces, whether virtual or physical, whether in private or public spaces. And we can play our part by creating safe spaces, whether it's through speaking in forums like this, through entrepreneurial fund programs, or even by exposing more people to leadership experiences and academic opportunities. What is important is making sure that leaders are not only aware, but are sensitive to our issues, and that they are equipped with the right skills to be sensitive to these issues. And in my opinion, this can be done in 3 ways. First, equipping our youth with proper character development and education. This will ensure that we have leaders with the right temperament and ability to effectively serve. This also helps create a culture and society of mutual respect, of diverse and inclusive values that are needed in an ever-connected and interlinked world. Secondly, we need proper avenues for leadership development. Around the world, from company CEOs to national leaders, we're exposed to examples of young dynamic leaders. From community leaders and activists to CEOs and industry leaders. There are so many examples of leaders who understand that working to support and help their communities is what true leadership is about. And thirdly, through service learning. We need engaged youth to understand that you do not need to be in a position of responsibility to be a leader or to serve. Leadership starts with responsibility within your immediate environment, within your families, within our schools, in our workplaces, in our communities. Leadership should be about service. Now, more than ever, I think we need youth to remember that they are part of the community too. And like many that are part of any community, they deserve to be listened to. Lastly, creating safe spaces for youth also means paying special attention on breaking the challenges of gender stereotypes, which are too often associated with the challenges faced by young people. The African Union supports youth-led initiatives and has included the youth and gender perspective into several of its instruments. 2 that I'd like to mention are the AU's network of FemWise, which basically supports African mediators around the country, around the continent, and the African Women Leaders Network, which includes extraordinary young women who are selflessly dedicated to create peaceful and stable societies. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, distinguished guests, celebrating youth on a dedicated International Day is important. I can't say this enough. But creating safe spaces with them is key for their full contribution as partners in the creation of a more peaceful and stable society. So let's continue to engage. Let's continue to be involved and play our part through commitment to service, character education, and effective youth leadership. I wish you fruitful deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. Very wise words. And of course, we all are striving to get there with our youth. It's our pleasure now, and my personal gratitude and pleasure for a good friend and that I will be introducing, who has been a partner with us for quite a few events. My next speaker, His Excellency, Mr. Jorge Skinner. He is a permanent representative of Guatemala to the United Nations. Prior to his latest appointment, His Excellency served as ambassador to Belgium and Luxembourg and chief of mission for the European Union. Previously, His Excellency was his country permanent representative to the Organization of American States and Vice Minister to Foreign Affairs. Please welcome with big hand also.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to all. First of all, my recognition to you, Madam Kader, and to the International Federation for Peace and Sustainable Development, as well as to your husband. You're the driving forces that got us here today, and I thank you for that. Not many people remember that yesterday was the International Youth Day, as agreed in Portugal back in 2009, was it? Something like that. In any event, I thank you a lot for convening this debate. I hope we can draw some conclusions out of it. Particularly, I was impressed by Madame Mohammed. You touched the whole gamut of where we should be aiming at. First of all, I should bring to mind that only 4 months ago in the Security Council, the Secretary General's envoy for youth, Madame Wurika Manayake, brought 4 issues to the floor on a debate, open debate on youth. First was the global distrust of youth towards government, towards authority. And it seems that's something that is more and more recurrent in our societies. Perhaps something has to do with interconnectedness, something has to do with ideologies or fake ideology. I won't mention fake news, but people have the right to have their own opinion. The problem is there's too many opinions confusing the youth now. And you mentioned, Madam Mohammed, that indeed is character building the one we need, more than just repeating facts after facts, whether true or false. Second conclusion that the envoy on youth brought up to the floor was the exclusion of youth, totally, from social, political, and economic life. The more we strive to include them, the better our society is going to be in the future. This is, you mentioned it was a rainy day, but a rainy day today, it's a guarantee of the harvest tomorrow. And that's exactly what we need with youth. The more they are empowered, if you will, the more they participate or they take stock of what their societies and their countries are all about, the more the future is going to be traversing through a better state, meaning development, and we'll get into that. Third point, and she brought on this Security Council debate, was the importance of inclusion of young women, of course, and girls as partners in the network, working as real partners with the UN. I have no reservations in saying that women, particularly girls, educated girls, are the link to development. An educated woman, young woman, will send not only the children to school, but will feed the children. We men are less virtuous, and that's a fact. Sorry to say, particularly in our country's developing world, where demographics and parental disruption, in a sense, families being torn apart, relate very strongly to rates of poverty, to rates of violence, to rates of undereducated, undernourished children. So, even though it's obvious, I would say that the foremost participant in any public discourse, other than the government or the public authorities, should be the appropriation of those policies by the younger generation. The more they are aware of what's going on, the more they have a say, the more that they can influence that process. Particularly because if you look at the Agenda 2030, the Sustainable Development Goals, if the young population is aware of them, the more chances we have to implement them. And that's the real challenge we have today. So we hold that the children, the youth population, the young population are the real strategic partner for the implementation of the 2030 Agenda, since they're not only the ones going to be mostly affected by it in the future, but that these policies are pertaining to their own future. Generations to come will inherit this as more than a legacy, as the instrument in which they can make the promise of whether personal or social welfare coming true in a more complex and diverse world. I would say 2 passing comments. One, war in ravaged countries, where women and children particularly are innocent victims of violence. And also mention that in our latitudes, there's also violence directed to youth, specifically directed to youth on account of gangs or organized transnational crime, meaning drugs in many respects. This collude and exacerbate to impede that peaceful, resilient societies to become forward. In passing also, I would like to mention another great challenge, which is artificial intelligence and robotics. This will affect the development of young people. They condition not only their possibilities in the marketplace, but they actually take over some of the jobs that we take for granted. This is going to change in the future, and we better be aware how this affects the young population. So in a sense, as Madam Mohammed has said already, two issues that have been mentioned. First, health, and most importantly, education. If we invest in health, our young people will be in a better situation to not only to attend schools and become a more active force in their societies, but they won't be discriminated, and they won't be marginalized, and they won't be second-class citizens till they grow up. No, they should become more and more an active protagonist of their own future. And secondly, our significant need to invest in primary, secondary, and tertiary education. Education is the tool that is going to make us more free or less free in a society. So at the center of all this is the young population, the ones that are going to inherit all this. And if we train, if we have healthy young people, if they have a chance to become better, then our societies will be more peaceful, more resilient, and better equipped to deal with the challenges of this century. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Now it's a pleasure to introduce to you as well. The ambassador from Bolivia, he's not able to be with us at this moment, but he graciously sent his DPR to represent him and say his word. I'm going to say some bit biography on him. He is the permanent rep to the United Nations. Prior to his appointment, His Excellency was Minister for Government from 2010, serving a Deputy Minister for Coordination with Social Movement and Civil Society between 2007 and 2010. Further, he has served as President of the Permanent Assembly of Human Rights. Also, he was the Dean and Faculty Social and Humanistic Sciences at the University of Aquino in Bolivia. Now, I would like for the DPR to present herself, since I don't have any knowledge about everything, but she is more than qualified, and I'm really grateful that you are here. Thank you. Please give her a hand.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm here on behalf of Sacha Llorenti, the permanent representative of Bolivia to the United Nations. Unfortunately, he had to go away on a trip a very short notice, and he wasn't able to be here. He's really sorry to all of you for his absence, but he left a brief statement that I will read on his behalf. Thank you very much to the International Federation for Peace and Sustainable Development for organizing this important event, as well to all of the distinguished ambassadors and the youth briefers for their presence here today. Celebrating the International Youth Day is an opportunity to discuss the many challenges young people face today as they go through the gray area between enjoying the rights and protections ensured to children and assuming the whole range of responsibilities and entitlements of adulthood. There are approximately 2 billion young people in the world today, most of them living in Africa, the Middle East, and Latin America. In some of these regions, war and armed conflict create the young a vicious circle of vulnerability, recruitment, and violence. In other areas, the challenge of poverty, unemployment, and reduced opportunities can also lead to crime and other forms of violence. However, we should all be wary of looking at the young only as a threat or as a problem. For young people are, above all, an enormous force for creativity, passion, and solutions. When young people get involved in political processes, in peacekeeping, in social transformation, in cultural endeavors, in environmental issues, or in sustainable living initiatives, all of those causes are more likely to thrive and succeed. Today's young people are in general well-informed, educated, opinionated, technologically savvy, and capable of rallying their peers in a way that's very difficult to achieve elsewhere. They should be seen as powerful allies and not just as potential predators or victims. We should take their views and ideas into account. We should trust their leadership and continue to strengthen their networks and movements, because there is no way to achieve peace, security, or sustainable development without the inputs and participation of the world's young men and women. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now it is with great pleasure that I also will introduce another wonderful ambassador. I am so lucky today we have a very special group of ambassadors. So this is His Excellency, Mr. Bakhtiyaro Ibragimov. And he is the permanent representative of Uzbekistan to the United Nations. Until his latest appointment, he was deputy chief of mission in the country's embassy in Seoul, Korea, holding rank for political counselor between 2009 and 11. He was a director and United States and America's Affairs Department at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Please give him a big hand.
Thank you, Sally. Excellencies, my fellow colleagues from the Diplomatic Corps, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to start off my remarks by joining my colleague to commend efforts of the International Federation for Peace and Sustainable Development led by Ralph and Sally for convening this very important event to celebrate International Youth Day. I think it's a good occasion for us to put again youth issues on the spotlight and to consider thoroughly what problems they are facing to. In the contemporary world, promoting and protecting youth rights has become one of the major issues of the United Nations agenda, because today young people are more and more claiming their legitimate right to have broad access to adequate education, quality education, adequate health care, employment opportunities, financial services, and active participation in the public life, though we should admit that it's still a long way to go to achieve this goal. These issues are quite especially important given the fact that the number of the world population, youth population today, as it was mentioned right now, reach almost 2 billion people, and the future of our planet, its well-being, depends on what kind of people our children will grow up to be. Therefore, today I would like to share you with Uzbekistan experience on advancing and promoting the youth rights and interests. At the outset, I would like to note that in Uzbekistan, over the past 2 years, we have very dynamic transformation of society into various areas of the society led by our President Shavkat Mirziyoyev. The government is taking bold steps in further expanding reform in all fields, with aimed at the one goal, to build a democratic state and a just society guided by a simple principle: human interests come first, and including those of young people. The government of Uzbekistan has always attached great importance to youth issues. In our country, we enact a national law on state youth policy, which defines the political framework and guidelines for formation and implementation of youth policy and youth rights. We've also overhauled the youth movement by creating the Union of Youth of Uzbekistan, which nowadays plays more active role in social political life of our country. And the law I was mentioned on the youth right also stipulate the strengthening the role of public, especially NGOs, local authorities and media in carrying out the youth policy in our country. Dear participant, in the recent year, pursuing an effective policy has acquired special significance given the rise of terrorist threat and radicalization of young people across the globe. As various researchers show that most of the crime committed linked with the extremist activity and violence are committed by the people under the age of 30. In this regard, today it is extremely important to fight for the heart and mind of the young people by providing them with an opportunity for self-realization and building a barrier against the spread of virus of the ideology of violence. For the very reason in Uzbekistan, we do believe that it's crucial to advance multilateral cooperation in the sphere of social support of youth by protecting their rights and interests. During the 72nd session of the United Nations General Assembly last year in September in New York, our president, the president of Uzbekistan, proposed to develop a UN Convention on Youth Rights, a unified international legal document aimed at developing and implementing youth policy in the condition of globalization and rapid development of information and communication technologies. Given the importance of youth issue, we do hope that Uzbek initiative will receive overwhelming support by all UN member states, and we will together jointly develop a draft of that document and take a coherent effort in bringing it to fruition. Because from our perspective, it would be a solid contribution to advancing youth rights and more actively engaging young people to political and social life of the country, engaging them. And in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to wish all participants to have very productive discussion on the role of youth in today's world, and express hope that some ideas and proposals that have been already made and that will be made by other speakers will eventually find its place in new UN documents pertaining to youth issues. So at this note, I would like to conclude my short remarks, and I would like again to thank the organizers for convening this important event, and I wish all the best to other speakers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. I would like now, if you allow me, to introduce another very accomplished ambassador who has been with us at the UN for a few years, and we've been friends since the few years. His Excellency, Mr. Lazaros Kampawa. He is the permanent representative of Zambia to the United Nations. His Excellency was elected as the 67th President of the Economic and Social Council in 2011. Since 2007, Ambassador Kampawa served as the ambassador for the permanent representative of Zambia to the UN in New York. Prior to that, he served as Zambia ambassador to Ethiopia and to the African Union. Please give a big welcome to the ambassador.
Thank you very much, Ralph and Sally. And happy International Youth Day. The beauty of platforms like this is that you have the freedom to commit treason without the fear of being arrested. And therefore, in case some of the things I say appear treasonous, I believe I will not be arrested. First message I want to convey to the youth is that privilege is never given freely. We are living in a world where generationally we are privileged. And we are not about to give that privilege away. So first message, claim your space. Do not expect that things will be given to you, that you are guaranteed access, and that you are entitled to any privileges. Claim the space for yourselves. Second, the issue of responsibility, which has been talked about. If I ask the youth today, perhaps even a few of old ones like ourselves, what is the one thing that you cannot live without, and one thing that you would not be willing to let go of? Chances are it will be the cell phone. But if I asked any youth to give me access unrestricted to their cell phone, they will fight me to the death. And that is because we know what is in that cell phone. And some of the things we are not entirely proud of having them there. How are we exercising responsibility? How are we utilizing the opportunities that we have? Third message is deconstruct the Westphalia model. We have organized our world on the basis of a model that describes, that separates, that classifies, and all in a way as to make our different classifications mutually exclusive. The model we have is a model of us against them. It's a model, therefore, where to the extent that we consider ourselves different, it is all right to kill the other. It is all right to create borders. It is all right to create all sorts of boundaries between people. The youth and the future of the world will only be guaranteed if we move beyond this model and consider ourselves as citizens. It is a world where we should re-examine the role and the needs of even having armies. Why do we have to have armies and spend so much on these armies? To do what? It is because there is them against us, and we feel threatened by the different labels that we attach on ourselves. Last point. Be ambassadors, not of your countries, but ambassadors of your generations and ambassadors of humanity. I was asked recently when I was hosting the academy, a military academy, the US military academy at my embassy. One of the generals asked me, what if I had to choose one thing at the UN as an ambassador of the UN? What is it that I would like to see? Or what is it that I would like to choose to do at the UN? And I said, I wish all all of us, ambassadors, could transform from being ambassadors of our countries to being ambassadors of the world. The United Nations is a platform for the world. It is not a platform at which we should come to advance a national interest that is in conflict with the next national interest. It is a platform where we should be coming to advance the global interests. When we talk about climate change, when we talk about all these challenges, lack of opportunity for our youth, this is the platform. And in conclusion, let me just leave one saying from the Chinese. They say, if you want to plan for a day, catch a fish. If you want to plan for 1 year, grow rice. If you want to plan for a decade, plant a tree. But if you want to plan for a lifetime, educate a child. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Very, very wise. This is really the platform that I've been using 16 years now. And I am not an ambassador representing a country, but I figure this is the only safe place, and thank God for the UN, in spite of all of our problems, that we do have this platform, that we can come together and bring people together as a human being, because we are all children on this earth, all together, created the same. So we better get along better and help the young ones get better at it next time. Now, it is also a great pleasure to introduce another very accomplished ambassador who is very kind to be with us today. His Excellency, Mr. Carmelo Inguinis, a permanent representative of Malta to the United Nations. Prior to his appointment from 2013, he was Malta's ambassador to Tunisia. Between 2011 and 2018, he served as ambassador to Italy and San Marino, and concurrently to the Food Agriculture Organization, FAO, and the United Nations agencies in Rome. Previously, from 2009, he served as ambassador to the Russian Federation. He is a career diplomat. He had held several posts within the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Please give a big welcome to Ambassador of Malta.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Ralph, for inviting me. It's a pleasure and honor to be with you here. I think it's a very auspicious and timely event to celebrate the International Youth Day. I propose to divide my little time available in firstly sharing some of my own personal views of how I see the youth and the role of the youth in society, and then to share with you what my country has done in as far as youth is concerned. So basically, one of the big notable points is that in all parts of the world, the young people are in a majority. They are definitely more, if not in a majority, they are definitely hold a substantial proportion of the population. And nevertheless, there is not much awareness of the contribution that youth can do in society, and the ability of youth to contribute to a peaceful society and the attainable of sustainable development goals. Indeed, in some countries, youth is often ignored. And in some countries, there is not so much participation of youth in important activities. To the contrary, I think the youth are a vibrant part of society. They are the dreamers. The adults, the old people, we dream during the night only. You dream during the day. And you dream for a better future without any stereotypes, without any prejudice, any prejudgments. So in our view, in the Maltese policy view, is that youth are crucial in making peoples understand each other and understand the world and different cultures. They are also crucial in transforming consciousness to include diversity in religion, sex, etc. They are also crucial in forming an attitude of international harmony and cooperation based on tolerance, mutual understanding, and mutual understanding. So basically, we consider youth as the vectors of change, the vectors of achieving sustainable peace. And they have in this role as a primordial and a special responsibility to make this world a better world to live in. The problem lies that we often hear about we need to empower youth to do this. And we often hear about women empowerment, but we don't hear much about youth empowerment. So this turns me into the second part of my exchange of views here, what we do in our part of the world, in my country, to empower youth. And the first thing I must say is that in Malta, youth affairs falls under the Ministry of Education, whereas there is a minister, but underneath him there is a parliamentary secretary, a junior minister for youth affairs and sport. In Malta, we have enacted a national youth policy, and this national youth policy is implemented at a national level and at a local level. And the tool to implement this youth policy is through, on one hand, a national youth council consisting of different representatives of society, including, of course, youth organizations, and on the other hand, an organization called in Maltese Agencia Youth, Youth Agency, which is composed of youth only, youth and officials from our ministry. And the salient aspects of our national youth policy is around a set of objectives. And the objectives are mainly three: greater democratic participation of youth, secondly, an equitable economic and social development and progress, the third is inclusive change. And these objectives are based on a vision. This vision is composed of values of respect, values of sustained support, solidarity, and of course principles of access, inclusion, equality, etc. On this, there is an action plan which has been set up by the government, including in collaboration with youth organizations, an action plan which foresees action on 5 different areas. First and foremost, education and training. Secondly, health and well-being. Thirdly, employment opportunities and entrepreneurship opportunities for youth. Fourth, arts and culture. Fifth, social inclusions. And sixth, voluntary organizations, voluntary community activities. So one of the important, as I told you, one of the tools which implement this youth policy in Malta is Agencia Zaza, the youth agency, and this takes care of the youth empowerment program. And the youth empowerment program is basically teaches all along and interacts with youth organizations all along to how to debate. That is the essence of dialogue, how to debate without creating animosity. The second thing is how to share, and the basis of this is solidarity. And the third is how to accept people's different views and opinions, tolerance and understanding. We find that these three principles, the three principles are the foundation for a better society. And from all this, we have emanated a series of programs and activities. For example, we have a program called Divergent Thinkers, where we try to attract people, young people, to come to fora where they will speak whatever they like, about what they like, in a fashion which is very informal, so that they understand the interaction, that whenever they speak, sometimes people, they do not agree with you, but you learn how to sort of to present your arguments in a good way and in acceptable way for people to understand them better. There is also an activity and a program called No Hate Speech. There is also a series of programs encouraging youth to become activists, because we consider civil society as the backbone of democracy. So we encourage youth to become civil societies in different areas, not only in things which pertain to youth, but in every aspect of the country, environment, youth rights, education, transport policy, energy policy. We want youth to be activists and to create civil society. And for this, the government holds several halls, like, for example, like we use the halls of the UN. The youths have the right to use the halls of a government property to meet, to form their own youth groups, to form their own small civil society networks. Then we have some youth schemes which consider greater participation and try to encourage youth for contributing in literature, in arts, in music, theater, dance, sports. Besides this, youth and the government, they organize together lots of festivals not only for youth, but for the whole population, festivals like jazz, like sports, music, theater, etc. One important thing that I must say to you, and I close with this, is that in Malta the government has enacted a law, a bill, which amended the constitution, pushing down the right to vote to 16. This was done in March at the national level, so youth can participate in elections for electing the government at 16 years of age. However, to become candidate for an election, you still have to attain the age of 18. For local council election, the age was 16 since 2014. We have elected the law making participation possible for youth to vote in local council elections at the age of 16. So we are one of the two countries of the European Union, we and Austria, who have the voting age lowered to 16. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador. And that's a very good step to have them vote at that age. Very good.